Hello.
Hi, Mark. My name's Lucinda. Steve Evans has given me your details as you've been trying to contact me in hotel quarantine.
Yes.
I apologise. My phone seems to be deciding it's not having reception here. But I've been interference.
Whether they've got some sort of blocking going on.
That's what I'm not sure about. Yeah, for about 24 hours from yesterday afternoon through the night before, I didn't receive anything. So, curious about that.
Yeah, probably got some blocker going on. So, tell me about it. What's the story? I haven't seen the yet, but Steve sent me.
Okay, yes. Well, story is I'm a foster carer. I've been looking after some children for New Zealand children. New Zealand citizens in Australia for the past 2 years, the baby from birth. Child Protection decided, this is not all in the press release, but Child Protection decided that they needed to come to Australia. And I decided, Child Protection Australia, who are the legal guardians, decided as a matter of urgency they needed to come here. So I decided to attend with them. I have concerns, and in the press release we certainly talk about some of the concerns I have with regards to the safety within the facility, all those sorts of things. Essentially, our biggest hiccup came when I asked for more information in order to provide informed consent for the test and the medical procedures they're wanting me to do. And I said, I've got a research on this subject. Can you please give me some more information just so that I can have full informed consent?
What do you want you to do?
The COVID test. Yep. And that was declined. I submitted a series of questions 4 days prior, and that was declined in the form of a notice of conditional acceptance and liability, but that was declined. There was no attempt to provide me the information I needed for informed consent. So then they decided that the children who had done 14 days in quarantine were COVID negative, and up until day 13 were symptom free. They developed some cough and cold, like a cough and runny nose on their final day, but MIQ had decided at that point that the children were to continue to stay in hotel quarantine for a further 10 or so days with me, despite the fact that they had completed. Now, my plan was they were coming to New Zealand. They were transferring to their next caregivers in New Zealand, and I would go straight back to Australia. So at that 14 days, we were going to be likely sort of separated anyway, or around about that time. So my argument is there was no reason to keep the children in beyond that stage. The children were transferred into the care of another caregiver. I believe they unfortunately were then required to go and do another sort of 14 days quarantine. So if that's the case, they'll still be on day 7. Big concerned about that, but ultimately my case is not, this case is not about that. This case is now around the children and I have been separated, and they continue to keep me in despite the fact that I every day request for further information in order to provide informed consent. They've told me that I've refused COVID testing. I haven't. I'm just asking for more information.
You're giving conditional acceptance, which is completely different from a refusal.
That's exactly right. So it's been classed as refusal.
So long as they provide you with informed consent.
That's exactly right. And as per their consent form says the COVID test is not known to be harmful to health. Okay, can I have some evidence for that, please? And the consent form also states that I've been able to ask all of the questions that I require, and I've submitted those 4 days prior to the test in the form of the conditional acceptance document. And at the bottom it says, I understand that all is true and correct. Well, without all of that information, I need all of that for the informed consent to know that the information is true and correct. And I've got a nursing background, so I was a vet nurse for 20 years. I understand informed consent very well, and I've also done some nursing in the human field as well. So I understand that very well, informed consent, and that is I have my concerns about the test, and if they say it's safe, well, absolutely. Show me the evidence. I absolutely have the test. but that's been declined. Today is day 21, so I should have been released on day 14. I was in 14 days, no symptoms, and I did not refuse the COVID test. I consented on a conditional acceptance, which has been declined. My consent, essentially my consent has been declined, and certainly there was a refusal to provide the information I requested. Even if they didn't want to sign my document, there still hasn't been any evidence or information brought forward.
Well, you can always use their old acquiescence as a favourable thing for yourself. So if you know what I mean by putting a failure to respond or a failure to accept notice at the bottom.
Yes, I did. Tacit acceptance by not responding. So the document I submitted then was pretty, I think it scared the crap out of them. It was pretty comprehensive. It also asked them to take liability. So it was a notice of conditional acceptance and liability. Sourced through a community, and in conjunction with the community and the common law in Australia. That very much. Yes, that was too much. And their response was, we're not lawfully obliged to sign your document. My response was, absolutely, you're not lawfully required, just as I'm not lawfully required to sign yours, therefore there is no contract. No contract stands between us. Correct, no consent. There is no longer a contract, and the conditional acceptance stated that if there was a refusal to sign or ignoring it, then that would render there being no contract. So that's the stance that I've had for the last 7 days is for any COVID measures, there is no contract. Here's a conditional acceptance if you'd like to enter into a contract with me.
So what are they unlawfully detaining you under then?
Failure to have a COVID test. So essentially it's refusal of a COVID test, but what they've classed it under is that I don't meet the low risk criteria, which I haven't gone as far as I was actually going to state, well, I need to see your, the risk criteria. I haven't actually gone that far because I've now gone down the avenue of court action.
Sure. Well, they're breaching your rights to freedom of movement, quite frankly, aren't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Are you Kiwi or Aussie?
Australian, yes.
But you still have the freedom of movement and stuff regardless.
Correct, absolutely. And I broke up with the police on the final day, the day 14, the children were gone. I'd already said, please ensure that all of my transport arrangements are in place because they flew me from Auckland to Wellington. I wasn't aware until they handed me a boarding pass, and I just travelled all day with 3 young children. And so under duress, if you like, we were brought to Wellington, so they have an obligation to get me back to Auckland. And but that afternoon on day 14, so a week ago, they handed me a letter from Brigadier Glenis, the head of Managed Isolation and Quarantine, and said, you don't meet the criteria, you can't leave. And I said, actually, there's no contract. I am not obliged to stay. It would be unlawful to detain me. Well within my rights to leave, and they said, if you leave, you will be arrested. I said, can I have that in writing? They then said, all right, they set the police officer up, and I questioned him, what crime would I be committing, what law would I be breaking? My argument is that this is not a criminal offence, this is a civil matter, therefore it doesn't require police involvement. I invoked my native right for freedom to travel. And
private parties, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yes, essentially that's right. Yeah. So, the police, I've got to say, for about 3 or 4 days, I rang at least 2 or 3 times a day and talked to the different police officers on duty and said, would you arrest me? And what crime would you be committing me for? What crime would you be charging me for, etc. And look, essentially it got to, different ones said that I would be just forced to stay in my room. Others said that they would take me to Wellington Police Station. There was all sorts of different answers, but ultimately...
During quarantine, it's difficult for them to do that, yeah?
Yes, they were not interested. They got quite annoyed and quite aggressive because they didn't understand. They also didn't understand the law. But I was quoting back to them. Yeah, and they all admit it. A couple of them admitted they have the young constables here who don't know. And some of them, I've got to say, some of them were excellent, and they went away and read the acts and read some of the things that I gave to them, and they just came back with the same answer. So if I was in Australia, I would have walked out. But I feel somewhat more vulnerable being overseas, and I know that all the...
Have you contacted the Australian consulate?
Yes, they declined to help me.
Wow.
they said that they cannot get involved in issues of arrest and detainment or any kind of legal issues. And I said, well, I'm being, at that point I was using the phrase falsely in prison. But now I understand it's arbitrarily detained. But they... Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so that's where it goes. But they said, no, look, potentially we can't help you. If you do get arrested, contact us again. So I said, I'm trying to work that out with you. And I said this to the police officers as well. I'm trying to work this out with you now so that we're all clear that I am free to go. I said, I'm not a troublemaker, but I do know my rights, and this is the way it should be. I said that to the commissioner at the MC, and I also said it to the police. I said, I've got all the information, work it out. No, we can't help you. And the police were just said, no, we can't work it out with you. You need to talk to a lawyer. And I said, no, you're the one that's going to arrest me. I need to have it worked out with you. But like I said, if I was in Australia, I would have been arrested and worked with it that way. In another country, I felt somewhat, I wasn't so sure of the laws here and a lot more vulnerable. Yeah.
Wow. And have you contacted any media, or it's just that press release Steve's got going?
Press release going out now, and I have done some YouTube videos for about a week and a half, maybe getting close to 2 weeks, with an Australian New Zealand YouTube blogger, if you like.
I mean, I'm happy to put something up on my channel for you to get knowledge out there. Even if it's a matter of us doing a phone interview or whatever, and you just telling me your story like pretty much you just have, and putting it up so it's out there. So I find it shocking that the Australian consulate are wiping their hands of it, because you're not actually arrested, you're being arbitrarily detained. And if you're being detained under Section 23, you should have you been read your rights at all? Well, they're detaining you. I mean, that's something most New Zealand cops don't seem to grasp. Section 23 of the Bill of Rights, I don't know if you've read that lately, but Section 23 is rights of a person arrested or detained. So you have the same rights as being arrested as you do when you're being detained, and you're clearly being detained. You don't have freedom of movement. Yeah,
no, that's absolutely right.
You haven't been Mirandized at all, so they've already breached your human rights. So, not civil and political, but, wow. I'm gobsmacked.
It's pretty messy. I mean, it's crazy. Honestly, it's crazy. But the bullying, it's so rigid that they just don't even consider anything outside of the box. You have the COVID test or you don't. And they've actually, MIQ and on-site have stopped responding to my emails. I just kept bombarding them. I've already, in the first week...
I mean, if they stop responding to you, at the bottom of the email, write failure to respond within how many hours, how many days shall constitute a tacit agreement that you are unlawfully detaining me against my rights. That will get a response.
Well, this is the thing. There you go. Well, at the moment, I've been put in a too hard basket. Management changes about every week, so it's a different management that's keeping me detained here than was last week.
Well, didn't you go to the Regis Hotel in Auckland? Why fly you down to Wellington, or was that because of the kids?
No, the children should not be at this site. This is an inappropriate site for children. So the guard or the guards or the army personnel, I said to him, why did we come here? And he said, look, I think what's happening, Australia's closer than some of the other countries. So they figure the people who have been on short trips have to get to move to Wellington, and the people who have been on long plane rides have to go stay in Auckland. But, I mean, I had 3 young children. I was really down. A 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 5-year-old.
They sent you back to Aussie. If the kids are no longer under your care and they've been passed on to the next caregivers, why not just send you back?
I put that to them. I said, I present zero risk. I said, just get me to the airport. I will get on the plane. By the time I'm at Auckland, the only people I'll be interacting with is people coming into the country and about to quarantine, people leaving the country and another country's problem, or staff who work there amongst that environment anyway. But it's all, they haven't responded to any of that. Again, I put that forward from the start. In the first week here, this environment is not appropriate for children, and even
I haven't been in the detention facility, so I don't know. So
Well, the exercise here, so they're required to provide a designated outdoor area where, where social distancing can be, maintained, yes. This facility, the exercise area, is a 2-level car park, level 3 and 4 car park that's poorly ventilated. It has a gas leak in there from a gas pressure exhaust system. There's cars driving around there, so you have car exhaust and the risk of the children being hit by a car. And it's the same area they use for the smoking breaks. And when I went down there the first day, I could smell cigarette smoke in there, and I'm like, I've got a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. They're allowed out of their room for a 30-minute break and a 40-minute break. That would be for the rest of that, 2 hours and 50 minutes in the room.
So you get 10 minutes more than any convict would in jail.
There you go. Is that how it works? And some days
you get 1 hour exercise in jail, so
there you go.
30 or 40.
Yeah, and if you're right. And if we miss those breaks, so they were sometimes late, and there was the odd day here where they got missed altogether. And from day 12 onwards, you can have your morning break, and then up until day 14, you were not allowed to have any break. They changed that rule while we're here. They said after your COVID test on the morning of day 12, you will no longer be allowed to leave your room. So then I had children in the room for 24 hours. So, but I complained about the safety in the environment, even in the rooms aren't set up for having children in 24/7. If I was here for 1 or 2 nights with, kids who come and go for the day, it would be different. Yeah. 100%. But the risk is I had a 1-year-old, she could reach the door handles. She was not strong enough to pull the doors fully open, but I was concerned she could pull them open enough to injure or even amputate her fingers.
Bullets too, wouldn't they? So they would have been. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that, and the other thing was the shower. There's no, it's a glass sliding door to go into the bathroom, it's a glass swinging door to go into the shower, and she could reach the shower handles, so my concern was that she would burn herself, and she was fascinated. So again, I put all those concerns forward. I said, this is not an appropriate facility for the children. Even, just the exercise area alone being an enclosed car park, that is not a designated outdoor area. And then by the end of our first week, escalated the complaint to the Ombudsman, who only just got back, and they're doing an inspection of the facility today.
There's also not just New Zealand Ombudsman, there's the Australian New Zealand International Ombudsman Association. People that, if you don't get luck through the Ombudsman, you go to them, and it's actually based over in Aussie, but they actually have an office, believe it or not, in Buckingham Palace.
Oh, okay. So they sit supreme to all of the others.
Yeah, exactly. They're who the Ombudsman answer to, basically. So there's that one as well. A gentleman by the name of Graham Axford knows all about them, because he actually had the first complaint because of orangutan with Australian New Zealand Ombudsman Association. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. So I've essentially got 2 concerns. At the moment, I don't know a lot about the children, but they would, because they were creating a new bubble, they were having to recommence their quarantine from as if they hadn't done it and do a full 14 days again. Now, I'm grateful that I found out the children are no longer in this facility, but I don't know where they are, and I suspect they're still in quarantine and they'll still be required to do another week, which to me is...
Whoever took custody of the children, it's on their head now, really, isn't it? It's not on you.
Sadly, that's it. And I've blasted Australia Child Protection, who are the guardians, who I said, your job is not done until you fight the system and get those children out. I said, this is child abuse. It came down to domestic violence under New Zealand law. So, I got them moving the other day and they've got a bit scared. Yeah. But I'll be able to give them a much harder time about it when I'm back in Australia and to be... But yeah, look, you're right. The people who have taken the children now, and that fits with the guardianship. I've done my advocacy there.
You've done on that side, but it's just the fact that your rights are still getting breached.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that the Australian consulate aren't stepping in, because if they say they can't get involved in anything with the arrest, then they're stating that you're arrested. If they can't get involved with someone that's detained, well, then they're agreeing that you're being detained.
Yes, and she said we can't get involved with anyone who's detained or arrested.
Exactly. You are neither. So why aren't they getting involved unless you are being detained?
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, that's a good point. You make a great point. Because I said to her, if I was to make it to your premises, you would be required to give me refuge, wouldn't you? And she said, oh, well, it's not like you're in a fund. You know, and I was like, okay, but she's like, there's no accommodation, you can't stay here. And I was like, okay, but you are required to give me refuge from what I understand.
Yeah, they would have to get a hotel room or put you somewhere where you can be safe, of course.
Yeah, but they were not interested at all.
Because you still have internet, do you?
Yes, I do. I have it here.
Yeah.
The Facebook deleted my Facebook for telling too much truth in the middle of January. I'll get their website. That's a great idea. I'll contact them that way.
And if you like, contact me back, or in a couple of days, if you're still locked up there, we'll do a Zoom interview perhaps and get your face up in there and tell your story.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, thank you.
I've got like a couple of hundred email addresses for media as well over here, so I'm more than happy to chuck it all in their direction.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Well, Steve's just sending it out to his connections. He's a great networker, but he's been a brilliant support. As everyone who's had contact with, like yourself and so many, it's an amazing network that you guys have. I really hope that I can find something similar in Australia that I can support and become involved in, because you guys have really made a difference. Keep up the amazing work that you do, and thank you for your support.
You have it all, so that's not a worry. All right, well, best of luck, and stay in touch, eh?
Thanks so much for your time, Mark. Really appreciate it.
No worries, Lucinda. Thank you.
See you later. Bye-bye.